Hi BookTube, I'm Erin and this is my channel Waiting Moose. Today I'm going to be doing a book review of Birdie by Tracey Lindberg. This book is one that I've seen on other channels. I believe Books and Lala is where I saw it. I could be wrong on that, but typically it would be on a Canadian's BookTube video because it's a Canadian author. As you can see, I got it from my library, little Canadian flag, and it's about a Cree woman in Alberta and BC. So that's kind of where we start. Our main character's name, I'm not going to hold it up, sorry, because I wave it around and it's distracting. Our main character's name is Bernice Mitus, but she is actually, her nickname is Birdie. She is a Cree woman who grew up in northern Alberta. The reserve that is created for this book does not exist. It's called Loon Lake, the Loon Lake Reserve. It is a fictional reserve. The author says at the back of the book that it is a fictional reserve, but she does spend time in a few real places. And one of them is Edmonton, and one of them she spends a short amount of time in Calgary. And then she moves, hello Canadians, she moves to Gibsons, BC. Now, Gibsons, BC apparently is a real place. I did not know that. But Gibsons, BC was also the setting for my not-so-favorite TV show from my childhood, The Beachcombers. This is, if you grew up in Canada in like the 80s and 90s, you probably saw The Beachcombers at some point because it was, you know, we had two channels throughout the entire country. We didn't have a lot of options. In this book, Bernice goes to Gibsons, BC, searching for the lone native man who was on The Beachcombers, Pat John, who played Jesse. And it talks a little bit about his representation on the show and how, you know, most episodes he didn't even have speaking parts, but he was a main character in the show and he was on all the time. So it was kind of weird that, you know, ooh, there was an episode where he got an actual speaking part and he said a whole sentence instead of grunting and pointing, which is just disturbing. You know, that's so sad. Birdie has things happen to her. She ends up traveling. I hesitate to give you too much information because a lot of it is just, it was a surprise to me, and I think that it should be a surprise to anyone reading this. Bernice goes out to Gibsons, and let's just say that at this point in her life has not been what she expected. Her mom abandoned her. She spent some time living with her aunt, Val, her cousin Frida. They play a big part in this book. A white woman that she works for and rents a room from in Gibsons plays a large part in this book. And it turns into this really interesting story of survival and life for these women in Canada. And it was, I loved it. At the front of the book it says, Bernice Mitus will not be broken. Can you read that? The whole book, it was a 2016 selection for Canada Reads, and the back of it says that it's funny. I don't know if I would really consider it funny. There were some moments in it that I suppose were, and she is amusing, but at the same time it's heartbreaking. It is such a sad book, and it made me wish that I could change things that I have zero control over changing. I will say that at the start of the book I found that it was a little, I shouldn't even say that. I've been reading too many books at once, and so I was about to say that at the start it was a little slow. It wasn't. It was a little confusing and a little, like, it took me a while to get into the pace of the book and get into the author's style. But as soon as I did, I was immersed in the story, and I thought that went really well. It is written by a Cree woman who is actually an Indigenous Studies professor at a couple of universities, and she calls herself the next in a long line of argumentative Cree women. So I love that description of her and just women in general. Yeah, and she hails from the Kelly Lake Cree Nation community, and I'm not really sure where that is. Anyway, so this book, it combines a lot of Canadian pop culture. The Frugal Gourmet is one of the TV shows that is discussed, Beachcombers, but it gives you that culture clash between what you see on TV and what life on a reserve really is like, more so than Nobody Cries at Bingo, the book that I read previously, written by a Cree woman. This one I thought was a little more in-depth. It went into more of the problems, the situations that happen on the reserve. So that way it was very interesting and heartbreaking, as I said. And it's just this one woman's travel through her life from childhood and into her 20s, and how her decisions and the decisions of her family affect those around her. I don't even know if I could say there was anything I didn't like about the book. Parts of it were a little hard to follow for me, but I think that was more because I was reading too many books at once. I thought Bernice, or Birdie as a character, was amazing. I liked the how she was drawn. Like, you really get a feel for the characters. I mean, this is very, very character driven. It's not very plot driven at all. It's very literary, I would say. So there's that. I loved reading about a city that I used to live in. So I spent 11 years-ish living in Edmonton, and so I knew places that they were talking about. Again, there were fictional things. So the school she went to, I believe, is fictional in Edmonton. The apartment building where her aunt lives, I believe, is fictional. There's the name of a hotel, and I know that's fictional because that does not exist. Yeah, so that was... I didn't like how she talked about Calgary and calling us snooty. We are, probably. But I don't like being called that. I liked sort of the tour of how she got places, what was involved. She goes to Waterton Park, she goes to Vancouver, she goes to Gibson's. I don't like how it ended. I like how things wrapped up for Birdie herself, but the epilogue... Was it the epilogue? I shouldn't say that was the epilogue. It might not have been the epilogue. Yeah, the epilogue I thought was interesting, but I didn't like it because it just ended, and I'm like, so what does this mean? What happened? But the author does say in the notes at the back that we will probably be hearing more about that character that was written about in the epilogue. So there's that. Hopefully I get more information. I would buy another book by this author. I would absolutely buy another book by this author. I recommend this book because while it doesn't really show the typical Canadian society in a great light, it does give you a good idea about how we treat natives in Canada, and it's not good. So this is an Own Voices book, and it was written extremely well. I totally recommend this for anyone. I believe I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I mean, it's 260-ish pages long. I loved it. The story was completely engrossing. It made sense for it to end when it did. Not my best review ever. I'm trying to get a little better at them. Give a little more information. I did not take off a star because she called Calgarian snooty. I promise I did not take a star off because she called Calgarian snooty. So yeah, that was Birdie by Tracey Lindberg. If you have a chance to pick it up and read it, I highly recommend it. It is just, I thought it was such a good book. That is it for today. That's my book review, so I will be talking to you soon. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye.